Hi, my name's Martin Scudder, and today I'm going to talk to you about the 10 steps you need to take in order to protect yourself from cyber attacks. Hi, my name's Martin Scudder and I work here at Links Networks as part of the sales team. Today I'm going to talk to you about the 10 steps that you need to take in order to protect yourself from cyber attacks. Now, I'm not going to pretend that there's anything necessarily new here or anything that you can't already read online. These 10 steps come from a guide that was released by the National Cyber Security Centre, which is a government organisation. But what I hope to do is make it a little bit shorter and a little bit more understandable. Step 1 is actually broken down into 3 parts, and I think step 1 is the most important part, because without step 1 working, none of the other 9 steps are ever going to succeed. So step 1 starts with determining your risk and determining what risks you think can affect the business or the organisation the most. The second part would then be defining your risk strategy and your risk policies. So it's drawing up a policy of how you are going to defend against the risks that you have identified. And the third part is getting management or board level buy-in. And I think that that's the most critical, because without management level buy-in, you cannot expect the rest of the company to work within that policy. And without every single person in the organisation working towards that policy, it will fail at some point. It's worth mentioning actually that if you employ in some way, shape or form all 9 of the following steps, or if every organisation was able to employ all 9 of these following steps, 80% of all cyber crime would have been eliminated over the last 12 months. The next step is managing user privileges. In this step, we're talking about managing user privileges, and by that I mean ensuring that the right members of staff have access to the right data. That data could be file data, it could be emails, or it could be application data. So for example, we only want the accounts team to have access to the accounts package. Now, 80% of organisations say they have a policy in place to ensure this happens, which sounds great, but in reality it means that 20% of organisations' data is at risk. In the next step, we're talking about incident management. In this step, we're talking about incident management. So I'll start with a question. You come in at 9 o'clock on Monday morning and you find out that at some point over the weekend you've suffered a cyber attack. Do you know what to do? More importantly, if you weren't there, would other members of staff know what to do? So it's critical that you have a plan in place, but even more important, you need that plan documented. I'm amazed to find that only 32% of organisations currently admit that they've got a plan. Even more importantly, if this were to happen, you need a disaster recovery plan in place, something that is going to enable your organisation to get back on its feet. In the next step, we're going to talk about monitoring. The next step is monitoring your network, and by that I mean employing the policy that decides whether you are going to monitor the network in real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or whether you're just going to check logs first thing in the morning. There are various tools out there from different vendors, but Cisco Stealth Watch is an excellent product and works nicely as part of Cisco's security suite of products. The other key thing with monitoring the network is to not just monitor now. You need to go back and monitor past logs. The reason for that is a lot of these cyber attacks are very intelligent now, and they don't happen immediately. They'll burrow onto your network and they'll sit there for weeks or months until they think the time is right. You need to be able to spot those anomalies in activity that will give you an indication that something is there or something is happening, and that will give you a better preparation to be able to stop it. The next step is home and mobile working. The next step is looking at home and mobile working. So it's particularly focused on securing your data regardless of where people are accessing it. And the critical thing here is we have to ensure that all staff adhere to this policy, otherwise it's not going to work. So we are talking about any device, be that a mobile phone, be that a tablet, be that a laptop. And again, we're talking about anytime, anywhere. So we're talking about working from home or a public place. Interestingly, just 20% of companies currently have a policy in place for securing their data remotely, as in not from the office. That's a frightening statistic. You have to have your strategy covering your staff in every single location. The perfect tool for this would be Cisco Umbrella. It's an easy to use, easy to install software tool that monitors at the DNS layer. And what that means is it protects your staff from any threat, be that internet-based or email-based. As an example, people who were using Cisco Umbrella when the WannaCry attack happened would not have been affected. Umbrella would have defended against that. And critically, it requires no input and no knowledge from any member of staff in order to use it. It just sits on their device and works. The next step is secure configuration. In this step, what we need to do is ensure that you have a secure configuration for all devices and that it's applied constantly. And by that we mean applying patches as soon as is possible, as soon as they become available. Interestingly, 91% of companies currently have a policy in place that allows them to apply patches and security fixes immediately. Now that sounds great, but that means 9% of organizations are not doing it. And referring back again to the WannaCry virus, that was exploiting an open weakness in an old operating system. And again, there was a patch available to defend against that, but it was the organizations that hadn't patched that were most vulnerable. The next step is removable media. In this step, we're securing removable media, and by that I mean CDs, DVDs, USB sticks, SD cards. What we need to do is either decide whether we're going to stop people using them completely, or if we're going to allow people to use them, make sure we've got the security tools in place to stop any attacks coming from them. So we need things like malware scanning and ensuring that those cards are not infected. Currently, just 22% of companies scan removable media for things like malware, which is a frighteningly low statistic when you think about it. The next step is malware protection. So the next step is setting up an anti-malware defense critically across your organization. And really what we need to do is figure out all the points of entry on your network and securing them. So that could be from the obvious, like your internet connection and email, through to, as we've already mentioned, removable devices and security patches and anything that you're going to download. One great tool to defend against this is Cisco Anti-Malware Protection, or Cisco AMP, which is part of their cybersecurity suite of products. The next step is user education and awareness. The next step looks at employing a security policy, and critically that needs to outline acceptable use of company systems. Ideally, you would include this in training for all staff, and critically I think it's important that you maintain that training. This isn't a threat that's going away, and staff need to be constantly reminded that they need to be vigilant. Just 37% of companies accept that they have a policy in place at the moment and they train their staff, and that's again way too low. It needs to be all staff in all organisations so that they are aware of where the threats are. The next step is network security. So in this step, we're talking about protecting the network and primarily defending at the perimeter. So we're talking about a firewall. And interestingly, only 89% of companies or organisations have a firewall in place. Now, I don't have a statistic as to how many of those firewalls are next generation firewalls, and what I mean by that is intelligent devices that can update themselves, and that means that they are going to protect you against the latest and most imminent threat. I would suspect that the 11% of companies that don't have a firewall in place have made a decision that it's too expensive to employ. And what I would say there is, if that's a concern of yours, speak to Links Networks. It doesn't always have to be that way. We can find the right solution for you. Firewalls ultimately are about stopping unwanted access to your network. So it's about stopping unauthorized access. It's about stopping unauthorized or unwanted downloads of things like malware attacks and that kind of thing. So I can't stress enough how important it is to have a firewall on the perimeter of your network. They were the 10 steps to cybersecurity, and I have to say they make up the Cyber Essentials accreditation, which is a government-led initiative that allows you to show your customers and partners that you take cybersecurity seriously. Links Networks is already Cyber Essentials accredited, and we can work with you to help you achieve that accreditation if you're interested. If you want more information about it, please get in touch. I'll be happy to talk to you.